So I decided to write the book. And it took me a year to write. I sent it off to the first publisher, and she phoned me 45 minutes later and said, we want it, which was extremely gratifying. It was just, and humbling. And then she sent it to your beloved Prof. Janssen and asked him if he'd be interested in commenting on it. And he liked it so much that he wrote the foreword to it. So I knew I was on the right track. And there's nothing in here, and there's nothing I'm going to tell you today and this afternoon and tomorrow, I hope you'll be here for tomorrow as well, that isn't common knowledge. All I've done is package it in a way, in my way, that I can share with you, and hopefully that you will be able to consume it and understand it and live. And I have learned when I'm under pressure, when I put myself under pressure, I deliver the best work by far, especially if I'm writing. I'm far more creative if I leave in that pocket of panic where I think I'm not going to meet the deadline. And now that I have my own business, I have to set my own deadlines. And I thought it would be different, that I wouldn't do that. And I still do that. But what I do in the procrastination periods, when I'm trying to find anything else under the sun to do other than the task at hand, is do the more sort of mundane stuff like the emails and filing and sorting out my desk. So it's actually work, but it's not the creative stuff. So this will happen in the workplace. There's very little leeway for procrastination in the workplace because you're expected to be productive 95% of the time. You are. But if you can manage your time and learn to manage your time, if it's possible, if you're allowed to, in your first year of work, you will be pretty much told, do this, do this, do this, work with that person, work on that project, work with that team. I want these results by this time. You'll have very little leeway. But if you can sort of manage your time so that you get, when you're feeling less creative or less intellectual, that you can do the more mundane things, and I do suggest you do that. So how can I be punctual? Plan, prioritize, prepare. They're such beautiful words, but if you don't do them, they mean absolutely nothing, as you have discovered. So planning is planning your ideas, planning your activities, planning your day, planning your week, planning your year. And planning it's not something that comes naturally to me either. I love a good business plan. That's I love doing that more than anything. But I'm fairly spontaneous, and I like to give myself maybe too much thinking time during the day. You're nodding your head there. And I think, to be honest, it's a cop-out. I call it thinking time, but I think it's possibly, mental laziness or something. But when I have a big project on, or I'm working on another set of workshops, or I'm putting together a facilitator guide or a learner guide, I have to be extremely disciplined. I can't spend half my day daydreaming, or because I have a home office, walking around, watering the garden, or brushing the dogs, or whatever else I can think of to do, so as not to work. So planning is extremely important. It's not just planning the project that you're involved in, but it's planning your morning, planning your afternoon, making sure that you're in the right space, that you're eating the right things, that you are in fact eating, that you get to work on time. And if you are a bit slack about these things, it's essential to plan. And then prioritizing, the whole thing of triage, where you just decide which are the most important things and which you're going to deal with first, second, and third. In the workplace, you won't automatically or straight away know what the most important things are, but you will very soon learn. But in your life, it's worth stopping and thinking about, am I trying to do too many things at once? Should I rather be doing this thing before I do this thing and then this thing? Figure out what is the most important in your job and in your life, and do the most important thing first. Because if you leave the most important thing till last, it might not be one of those lovely creative things. It might be something as mundane as filling in your tax return. That kind of thing, if you leave till last, is not going to help at all. So prioritize and figure out what is the most important thing. But also don't let the least important things fall away. The filing and returning the phone calls and all of those things. Those are also important, they're just not at the top. And then preparing. So preparing your day, preparing whatever work you have to deliver. Especially if it's a new job, in a new field, it's very easy to dive straight into it and think, okay, I've been told to do this, and I've got to do this, so I'm going to do this, and then you do it, and it doesn't work or it doesn't make sense, and you sort of know in your head that you're doing that. Does anyone have that experience? Where you just leap into something? It is so important to prepare, and preparing means thinking, and it means making notes, and it means doing research and asking questions before you actually do a task. It is another tendency of mine to leap in and do something and then get halfway and think, hang on a sec, I haven't done the research. I should have interviewed so-and-so, I should have done this, I should have checked the timetables or whatever it was. So prepare. Why is punctuality so important in the workplace? And give me 5 reasons. Yes?
To show respect.
That is number 1. I'm so glad you said that. Because the opposite, when you're late, it shows a lack of respect. If you're late for an interview, or you're late for a day at work, then you've just told everyone you have no respect. Why else? Why else is punctuality important? Yes?
It shows you take your job seriously.
Yes. Did she just steal your idea? Yes, it means you take your job seriously. It means you take yourself seriously. Anything else? Yes.
I think it's also for effectiveness. If you are late, then your whole day is pretty much unplanned for, because now you're late. You were supposed to do this in half an hour, but now it's not being done, and then everything just kind of moves up. So your effectiveness of the day goes down.
Yeah, absolutely. Anything else?
It also shows interest, because if you're late, then you're not really, it's not important for you. Your job is not important for you. So.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think it also communicates a certain message about you to everybody else.
Yes.
Don't care.
It does. And it also sets a good example to those other people. Anything else?
Can I add something?
Yes, I think because there is a saying that says punctuality is the soul of business. If that should be the case, it shows professionalism.
Yeah. Yes, it absolutely does. Yes.
Yeah, to represent the image of the company.
Yeah. Very much so, especially if we're talking about clients. And also, I mean, as you said, who was it who said, if you're late, then everything sort of snowballs.
away,
Yeah. So if you're not punctual, especially if it's a regular thing, then you're actually shifting the gears of whatever is happening, whatever's happening with your team, or you're just upsetting everything. So, and people often ask me why I'm so fussy about punctuality, but it is for all of those reasons. Yes.
What happens in a situation, for example, with the lady on the airplane who had an interview? Because that is out of your control.
It is absolutely. And I said to her, she'd sent a message. She couldn't get through. She tried to phone. She sent a message. So now she's sitting on the plane knowing that this guy has received a message, a text message from his PA to know that this young woman is arriving late. And all you can do is go there and calm yourself down first, which we will also talk about, I think, a little bit tomorrow. And be honest and say, I'm really sorry, but it was out of my hands. Do you need to reschedule? Which I hope not, because now she's flying for the interview. You just have to make the best of it, but stay calm and stay professional. And then deliver all the other things. I mean, punctuality isn't the only thing you can do to impress. There are many other things, so do all of those things and be all of those things. And just hope that he's not a terribly difficult person. If he's a terribly difficult person, you possibly don't want to work for him anyway. So to be punctual, you need to manage your time. And if we can't go into time management in any depth, because that would take a day. But it does involve planning and prioritizing and preparing. And being realistic about time. Don't sort of say, oh, I'll give myself half an hour to do a certain task, if you know in the back of your mind it's going to take you an hour. And don't say, it'll take me half an hour when you know it'll take 10 minutes, because you want to give yourself 20 minutes free time. So be a realistic in the workplace. So I'm talking now about bad attitude. Of course, the right attitude is a positive one. And it's full of hope and energy and optimism. But bad attitude is like a flat tire. If you don't change it, you'll never go anywhere. And I write about that not in some depth, because this is not a book about depth, it's a book about behavior. But if you think, okay, hands up those of you who know somebody who's related to somebody or is associated with somebody who has a really bad attitude. Okay. Hands up again? Sorry, I just want to... Okay, how does that make you feel?
Being around that person, it demotivates me.
Yeah. It's terribly demotivating. It also makes you feel angry. There's something, when someone has a bad attitude, it makes you feel the same sort of anger and frustration and aggression or whatever it is that they're feeling. So I'm not going to talk to you about not having a bad attitude, because you wouldn't be here if you did have a bad attitude. I was doing a workshop a few weeks ago where we were talking about writing skills, and I asked everyone to write a piece, and I read it, and I told them up front that there will be critique, that I'm going to be honest with you because I do writing training. I'm not going to be cruel, but I'm going to be honest with you. And I said something about his writing that he didn't like, and it was a valid thing, and it wasn't a nasty thing, and he threw his book down on the floor and he stormed out. And he missed the whole workshop that had been paid for him to attend. So that kind of bad attitude is so deeply destructive. What I do want to say is a couple of tips for managing people with bad attitude in the workplace. So I have this little theory that everyone you meet should be treated with respect. Do you agree with that or not?
Yes.
You do. Good. Because a lot of people believe that respect needs to be earned. And in a perfect world, that is so. It would be lovely if respect needed to be earned. But I see respect very much the same way I see love. It is two things. It is an emotion and it is an action. It is a deed. Love is an emotion, love is an action. Respect is an emotion, a feeling, but it's also an action. And if you have to deal with somebody in the workplace who has attitude, whether it's your boss or your colleague or somebody that you encounter every day, and it's getting to you, it's worthwhile practicing respect towards that person. Because the opposite isn't going to work. That sort of irritation and annoyance and complaints and whatever, none of that will work. But if you treat them with respect, you are going to get more out of them. Do you think you could do that? Would you be able to do it? And I don't mean while sticking a knife in their ribs. My feeling about respect is that you don't know that person with attitude. You don't know their story. You don't know why they're like that. And there's always a reason. I think there are very few people who are born really awful. So you don't know. They may have had a horrible childhood, they may have a sick mother, they may be worried about finances, they may be heartbroken, whatever it is. And maybe they've been like that for a long time, it's built up and it's just become them. But you don't know that. So if you can practice a little compassion towards somebody, and even imagine a backstory in your mind as to why they're like that, you will find it easier to treat them with respect. Bearing in mind that this is all about what you need to get out of this to be productive and not to go insane in your workplace. So it might not sound like such a great idea, but it actually changes lives. It changed my life when I actually realized that I could feel compassion for somebody I didn't like at all. And it just smooths the waters. There's another reason why you can practice respect towards somebody with attitude, is that if they're in your work environment, they have something to teach you. Whatever it is, it might be a small thing to do with the task, to do with the job itself. It might simply be that you don't ever want to be like that person. Okay, so dress sense. Now, there is a trend in this country, I feel like preaching about this, and it happens in the States as well. There is a trend for young people to watch soapies and to see this gorgeous woman with heels here and a cleavage down here and her hair up here and think that that is how people dress in the real world. And they don't. And if they do, they stand out like sore thumbs. Each industry and each company has its own idea of dress. So you might go in somewhere where it's perfectly okay to wear a pair of clean jeans and a t-shirt or a shirt and to wear tackies or whatever. You know, if you're in the IT industry, that would be smart, that would be dressing up. So, but you need to be aware of wherever you're going to work that you fit in with their dress code. And it starts before that, it starts at the interview process. So when you're looking at companies that you're going to apply to, find out, go onto their website, find out what kind of image they portray on their website. Call the HR office and say, what is the dress code here? So that when you go in for that interview, you look like you already work there. There is no value whatsoever in spending a fortune on gorgeous clothes that make you look fabulous, but they are not part of the company's dress code. Or even the company's style, it's not necessarily a dress code. So, and I will say, do not wear too tight clothes. Do not deliberately sexualize yourself when you're going in for an interview or when you're going into the workplace. Because if you do that, if you look in the mirror and think, wow, I look sexy, that is going to be the first thing somebody else thinks, and they're not going to think, wow, he or she looks professional. They will be so distracted by the magnificence of the appearance that they will stop seeing you as a professional. And it's a terrible mistake to make. And I know that young people don't do that with any ill intention at all. But I've had young people come in interviews with me who are dressed so inappropriately. And it doesn't make me judge them. You know, it's not that I think, oh, she's trying to look too sexy or whatever. What I do think is that she hasn't bothered to find out what we're about. So just be wary of that, okay? Give me a definition of a diva. Come.
Someone who overshares inappropriate stories in the workplace.
Absolutely, that's one of the things they do. But what else do they do?
Complaint.
Yes. They are difficult. That's very much it. They want things to go their way.
They are in maintenance.
Yes.
Exaggerating.
Sorry?
Exaggerating.
Yes, oh, absolutely. Yes, and high maintenance.
It's a grown-up brat.
Yes, it is a grown-up brand. It's exactly a grown-up brand. You know, they are completely self-involved. They want all the attention on them. And also, you know, with divas, as with people with attitude, I also have to try and tell myself that underneath this, and divas can be guys too, but underneath all this me, and how fabulous I am, and talking loudly and leaning across the desk, there's a normal person here with vulnerabilities and fears and like everything else. But they make it extremely difficult for you to see that. So, if you have diva tendencies, and I'm not going to ask you to put up your hand unless you want to, but if you have diva tendencies, just keep the lid on them in the workplace. It's fine and fun when you're with your friends if that's what they like. But it is so distracting and so annoying in the workplace. And also another thing that happens is that divas are terribly entertaining. So people who are there but not to progress and grow and deliver and be productive, often encourage the diva because it's entertaining. It's like having the TV on all the time. But if you do have those tendencies, pull them back, because there will be people watching you, people who might think, you know, she's really smart or he's really good at his job, but the distractions and the attention seeking, I couldn't possibly promote that person. I couldn't possibly ask that person to manage a team. I'm not saying divas don't get to the top, but I know from those that I've met and dealt with and seen on television that they are not the kind of person I would want to employ or I would want to work with. The idea of oversharing too, it's sort of, it's a desperate kind of self-indulgence. If you've got something that has happened, say a wonderful love life, and the person you've always fancied now fancies you and your love life is great, of course you can tell your friends. Of course you can, you're supposed to be socializing at work as well, but there is a time and a place and a way of doing it. It is not there for everyone's consumption. It's for your friends. So if you want, lunchtime, tea time, on the bus home, whatever, tell your story. The other kind of oversharer is, and oh my goodness, every company has one, and probably every lecture hall has one and every classroom has one, is the person, is the victim, the person who is always has a drama. And I do feel sorry for people like that, because the people who are walking victims often are walking victims. They often are deeply troubled and have terrible stuff going on. But there's also a tendency, if you're a victim with diva-ish intentions, that there's a tendency to look for pity and sympathy, which has a terrible impact on work. Oh, I couldn't finish it because my baby was sick. I'm not saying that be harsh about a sick baby, but it's how you deal with these things. So playing the sort of vulnerable little helpless person in the workplace is so unprofessional, and it's also will stand in the way of standing in your way. Let me try that again. Will stand in your way of getting ahead, of being promoted. When you're a professional, you need to behave professionally. You need to, the second you walk in that door, you need to put your professional hat on. So if you have personal issues that need to be dealt with, it could be a sick baby or a sick mom or some other crisis, you need to find the right person to speak to. And the right person would be one colleague or your line manager or someone in HR if it's a desperate issue. It's tough because when you're in the work environment, you have to toughen up. And it doesn't mean not feel anything. It means behave in a different way. It's very tough. And it can take some people years and years and years to learn that. And some people never learn that. So just try to separate your own emotional issues or turmoils from the work. And I'm not saying don't deal with it, I'm saying don't overshare them. The workplace is a great place to make friends and to socialize, but there are ways of doing it and ways of not doing it. I mean, don't you want that job? I want that job. That looks fantastic. So, as an employer, when I was working as a publisher, Media 24, and we had a big staff of about 54 people, I think I was something of a tartar. It drove me mad when people didn't work, when they were being paid to work. And there were deadlines. If there was nothing to do, then we would have lunches and parties. In the magazine industry, you always look for an opportunity to have a party. But when there were things to do, and there were deadlines, and there were sales targets to meet, and there were marketing materials that need to be signed off, and people were socializing, it used to drive me mad. And I believe that my attitude is quite an old-fashioned one, that it's actually supposed to be acceptable to not expect people to work. And I just don't agree with it. I think that if you want to be a get-ahead employee, if you want to be noticed and promoted, you will be the person who works when everyone else is chatting. You will be the person who keeps the friendly conversations for breaks and lunchtime and before and after work and on the weekends. It's very tempting when you start work and you meet new people, especially if you meet, if two of you are going together and you're working in the same office, and it's great, and all you want to do is chat about stuff. But it is not very good for your reputation, and it's appalling for productivity. I mean, the time waste. I'll give you a little example. Let me see if I can find it so I'm not making up figures. And it is about something we're going to be talking about later. But, okay, I'll find it during our break. But it's a figure that says something along the lines of, if you spend 20 minutes out of your 8-hour workday on personal phone calls, I think it's 20 minutes a day, which is it's not a lot. I mean, a lot of people do chat on the phone, or you phone your mom, or you phone your friend, and you have a conversation. Whether you're on your cell phone or on the company phone, that amounts to something like 8.71 days a year. And I consider that time theft, when you are supposed to be being productive. And I speak to quite a lot of employers, because the demand is growing for me to not only talk about young people going into the workplace, but it's about speaking to HR people and line managers to raise their expectations and not be afraid to say, no, actually, please get off the phone, there's work to be done. And this is one of the reasons why productivity in this country is dropping. Because nobody seems to, I don't know, it's gone crazy and nobody's saying, no, stop it. So I want you to be the kind of people who do say, no, stop it, who keep their socializing for social times. Also, yes, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, well, from my own observation since I've been in this country, I realized that, sometimes most of the things that happens in most of the offices is because many of the people they haven't got such facilities in their homes. And therefore, they believe that, I'm now in the office, I have access to this and that, so I can easily utilize it, but it has to be minimized. In the sense that, you can see the disparity within the societies in this country. And at the same time, people, they haven't got what we call the standard of what is supposed for people to have.
Yeah.
And that is the main reason why, when you see them in other places, they want to actually utilize the opportunity and do something that they cannot afford back home or back in their private homes, put it that way.
That is such a good point. So what you're saying is, and correct me if I'm wrong, that the standards need to be raised, but it needs to be recognized.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. Exactly. Because, for me, I've been living in UK for quite a while. The standard is you cannot be using office telephone for any private things. But you will find out that every family has got the same facilities they've got in the office at home. So they will not actually, and your line manager will be watching you and everybody will be watching you. You cannot use it. And in fact, if you do, it reflects on your annual report.
Yeah.
So everybody knows the ethics of what is expected of them when they are in the office.
Yeah.
But in Africa, and South Africa in particular, things are different because people haven't got the same opportunities.
I agree with you up to a point, because I know that not everyone has access to a home computer or laptop. So if the issue is socializing via Facebook at work, it does disrupt, it does interfere with productivity. But just about everyone has a cell phone, and most people have pretty good mobile phones that you can actually, you can communicate with other people. But I need to think about that quite more, because maybe there's a solution in that. Maybe there is, you can spend 5 hours, half an hour a day on social media, but not during your work time, during your lunch time. And a lot of companies do that. Or they have a time of day when you can do that. Maybe first thing in the morning or half an hour in the afternoon. So you do have access to not only to social media, but maybe doing research or just finding out a bit more about life.